Hello, evening crowd. Welcome to the last of 3 sessions of the 2025 Fall Winter Book Buzz. Hello to everyone on Zoom. Nice to have you with us as well. Everyone in the room, everyone on Zoom, all together. We're all together. I listened to the New York Times Book Review podcast. I recommend it. A new episode drops every Friday. And last Friday's podcast episode was about fiction coming out this fall. I was driving to Madison and listening to the podcast, and every time every time they mentioned a book that we're going to talk about this evening, I did a little yes. They are doing nonfiction this coming Friday, so I can't say, but they did a very quick riff through the celebrity memoirs, which was very funny. One of them quizzed the other to guess the celebrity memoir based on the title, which was very funny. But Gilbert Cruz, who's the host of the podcast, said fall is when it gets real. And at first I was like, that is such a book nerd thing to say. But I was like, yes, that's true. So this is the time of the year when the books that publishers think you're going to buy to give as presents to your friends and family come out. Because it's not, if a book comes out in March and it's great, that's fantastic. But if it's a little less than great, come December when you're shopping, you're not going to remember the book. So the idea is that in September and October and November, the books that they think are going to be the best books to read and to give as gifts, this is the time they come out. So if you are a particular fan of new releases, this is your time. We are talking about books that are coming out from September 2nd, the first Tuesday in September, to February 24th, which is the last Tuesday in February. We're going to talk about many more books coming out over the next few months than later in the cycle. Obviously, I know much more about them. I've put together, usually I have a visual aid, but handouts by genre of books. Again, for those of you who've been here before, this is a repeat. But there are 10 genre handouts this go round: literary fiction, popular fiction, mysteries, thrillers, historical fiction, other fiction, short stories and essays, biography and memoir, history and politics, and other nonfiction. Every handout, but the short stories and essays is 59 books. The short story and essays is 40. And I think that's 571 books. Okay. Julie will tell you that's way too many books for any one person to absorb. And that's fine. We will have those genre handouts for you on the table. You do not get extra credit for taking every single genre handout. Take the ones you are interested in. Come and have a lot more wine and don't take any. That's okay. I don't care. I have 2 hard problems when I'm preparing Book Buzz. The first is taking my lists of books and fitting them into these 59 slots per genre handout. This time, for the very first time, the hardest handout was history and politics. I had like 90 books for the 59 spots. It's a hot topic these days. We will talk about a couple of those books soon, and you'll see what I mean. But once I did that, I then had to go through those 571 and figure out which 20 to highlight for you this evening. And I'm going to take an example of a book that I thought about but didn't include to show you that this is an art and not a science. Because it's not just that they're notable, it's not just that they're buzzing, it's not that their early reviews are good, it's that I also think Wallingford wants to read it, which is very different from all of that other stuff, right? If the New York Times is raving about a book, but I don't think you have any interest in it from what I know of you as readers, why would I bother mentioning it? That would be nice. Yes, I'm working on that in my spare time, creating an algorithm for how to figure that out. So one of the books that I thought about is a new memoir by Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth Gilbert if you're in the Thursday Night Book Club, you know we're reading one of her novels, The Signature of All Things, which we'll be talking about next week. Her first memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, was a huge bestseller, turned into the major movie with Julia Roberts, made her a household name. And this new memoir, which came out today, is called All the Way to the River. And just this morning, Oprah announced that it's her new book club pick. And it's everywhere. I mean, it's a huge profile in the New York Times, huge. She's everywhere. And she's actually going to be, she's a Litchfield native, and she's going to be in Connecticut talking about the book next week. But the book is about her losing the plot, if you will. She leaves her husband, the man we meet in Eat, Pray, Love, because she realizes that her true love is her best friend, a woman who is a drug addict and dying. And in the course of their years together before this woman dies, they engage in some unbelievably self-destructive behavior. And all of that is described in the book in a way that is not flattering to her and doesn't end necessarily on an up note. And I just thought, you know, I'm probably going to read that. I'm interested to read that to see how she handles that topic. But I just didn't think that would really speak to you all. If you do read it, let's talk about it. But so that's an example of a book that I really struggled with. And it would be great if I had picked it and I said, oh, Oprah picked it for her book club. But that's just, I'm just giving you an example of how this is not so easy to do. You would have liked it. You can read it. You can read it and let me know about it. It's in the handouts. It's in the bio and memoir genre handout. Just because it's not one of the 20 notable doesn't mean it isn't in the handouts. Okay.
I'll note that.
Do. I did. And so, you know, I just had some back and forths. I called one of our colleagues was on vacation last week, and she was on a very long line at Disney World. And I said, I'm struggling with 2 books. And she said, I'm standing on this line, call me. And we had this whole back and forth about it and settled on a couple of last books. But so as you see, it's an art, not a science, but my heart's in the right place. And hopefully this will work out. Okay, so with that out of the way, Julie, my Vanna Whites are going to hand out the 20 notable titles that we're going to talk about this evening. For people on Zoom, you're going to have the PowerPoint. Rachel, okay, wait, I'll wait till it's not so loud and then I'll say. Yes, it goes off and on. It goes off and on. Okay. Can I ask that you guys, I know that this piece of paper is what you really came here for, but I'm going to talk to you more than you possibly want about each of these 20 books. I promise, okay? So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you are on Zoom, Rachel Taylor is manning the Zoom. If you have any questions at all, please put them in the chat and Rachel will ask them or answer them if she knows the answer. You will see each book pop up on the screen. There's a PowerPoint, so you will see the titles as I'm talking about them. If you want a copy of the 20 notables, put that in the chat. Rachel will get a list and I will email that to you. But you're going to see all the book covers right as I'm talking about them. Please, in the room, interrupt me. I really don't want to lecture at you for an hour, except for Pat. I know that. Ask questions, make observations, comments, the rest. Go and get more food, go and get more wine. There's coffee and tea on the side. Whatever you want. This is a togetherness thing. Okay? Yes? Yes. Okay. All right. So book 1 is Buckeye by Patrick Ryan, which is in the historical fiction handout and came out last Tuesday, September 2nd. Anyone in this room heard of Patrick Ryan? No. Patrick, it's what I expected. Patrick Ryan is in the book world a beloved short story author. He's written 2 short story collections that are very highly regarded, and he is the editor of One Story, which is a literary magazine, which is just what it sounds like. It publishes a single short story in every issue. So he's very plugged into the book world, and Buckeye is his first novel. I started hearing about this book months and months and months ago because my heroine, Ann Patchett, started raving about it on her bookstore's Instagram. Yeah. Months ago, she said, I have read this amazing book. It's called Buckeye. You're going to be hearing about it. Everyone's going to be talking about it. And I said, okay. She's giving us a sneak peek that this is her bookstore has a signed first edition book club. Clearly, Buckeye is going to be her September book. Fine. And then a few months ago, Barnes & Noble started raving about this book called Buckeye. And then on BookTube, which is the book arm of YouTube, book people on both sides of the pond were raving about this book. So I was like, I need to understand a little bit more about this book. I don't understand. It is, and I held it in my hands in the cataloging department last week, but since it's the signed first edition book club pick, a copy of it is winging its way to me signed by Patrick Ryan, even as we speak. So I don't have it to hold up for you, but I think what it is about it is that it is an old-fashioned, great story. And to be honest, we don't get that so much anymore, right? That's not the trend. It is about 2 families in a small town in Ohio from World War II to the Vietnam War. They're ordinary people leading typical lives of Americans at that time. And the reviews are gushy, like you can't believe. The New York Times said, omniscient, sweeping, almost defiantly sentimental. Buckeye is a reminder of the deep pleasure of following a cast of characters over their entire lives through births, deaths, marriages, tragedies, and hard-won reconciliations. Ryan clearly loves these people, and he makes the safe bet that you will too. So this is immersive, old-fashioned storytelling, and I think it is scratching an itch that we didn't even know we had. Ann Patchett said last week when it came out that it may be finally the great American novel. Now that's an astonishing thought, but Susan Gomes says, what? I'm just, so for all of these reasons, it's also Barnes & Noble's September book of the month, and it's the Read with Jenna of the Today Show book pick. It is unusual for 2 books in the same month to be picked. Again, that's just another example. There's just a tremendous amount of love out there for this book. Book 2 is Clown Town by Mick Herron, which came out today. This is in the mystery handout. If you are a fan of gritty crime, I'm seeing some nods in over there, fiction, you know the Slough House series of books by Mick Herron. His first one is called Slow Horses, and it came out in 2010. And it is about a group of MI5 rejects. That's not the right word. They were MI5 agents who screwed up, basically. And instead of rejects, and instead of being fired, they got sort of sent out to pasture in this place where they push papers around. They're not allowed to do the important stuff. And they're led by this really cranky guy named Jackson Lamb. And they wind up, of course, getting involved in espionage stuff, despite MI5's best intentions and helping solve some big stuff. And these books had a strong cult following, and then Apple TV picked them up and started doing a series starring Gary Oldman based on them, and they've now become extremely popular. So the fifth book in the TV series, the fifth season in the TV series, which is based on the fifth book, is about to come out with 2 more in production. And Clowntown is the 9th book in the series. I have very few hard and fast rules when it comes to reading, but the first is, if you're going to read a series, you start with book 1. Because the reason you love a series is mostly about the character development and less about the plot. So Slow Horses is the first book in the series. Clowntown is getting incredible reviews. They're gritty, they're darkly funny. You grow to really like this sort of ragtag group of people. This new one is about a very senior MI5 agent that gets caught up in a blackmailing scheme involving Northern Ireland, but it kind of doesn't matter. These are great, great books if you like this sort of stuff. And again, because of the Apple TV series, the books have gone from being a little cult thing to having widespread appeal. Okay, book 3 is called This Is for Everyone, and it is by Tim Berners-Lee, and it came out today, and this is in the other nonfiction genre handout. Once upon a time, Al Gore said that he created the internet. He did not create the internet, I'm sorry, but Tim Berners-Lee actually did. To the extent that any one person can be said to have created it, he did. And the reason that I can say that is that in the 1980s, he was working at a Swiss tech company, and he developed the computer software for URL addresses and hypertext transfer, the HTTPS thing that we see, and the HTML, the hypertext markup language that enabled people to share files from computer to computer, which is effectively became the World Wide Web. So he's actually the guy. And this book, I put it in other nonfiction, but it could also be a memoir. It's about how he did that, where he was at professionally when he did that, why he became the director of the World Wide Web Consortium, and is principally responsible for making sure that we don't have sort of a set of proprietary networks like TV. And we instead have this sort of, in theory, open internet. So it's the book itself. It isn't techie. It isn't techie. He's framing it. He goes from sort of how it came to be to where we are now, and the transformative nature of AI and what that means, and how we have to, he's pretty bullish on AI. I know that AI is, people have a whole bunch of different feelings about AI. He's pretty excited about AI, but he's also saying that he's putting it to us to define the terms that will govern how technology is in our lives going forward. He's acknowledging the dangers of it as it has evolved. And that's why I put this in other nonfiction, because it's more of a, it's more about where we've come from and where we are going than it is about his role in that. But it's he's a voice that should be listened to, because he was there at the beginning, literally. That answer your question? Okay. Book 4 is We the People by Jill Lepore. This is coming out next Tuesday, and it's in the History and Politics handout. Jill Lepore, that should be a name that should be familiar to you if you read in this space. She's a chaired professor of American history at Harvard, also teaches at the law school, and is a staff writer at the New Yorker. We are going to see a lot of books about the founding of our country. In case you haven't done the math, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence is next summer. Rachel is busy planning several programs about that to happen through the fall, winter, and into next year in commemoration. And there are a lot of books in the History and Politics handout that cover this subject, and there will be more, I'm sure, next spring. And I wanted to pick one to talk about with you, and this is the one that is showing up the most on the most anticipated lists. She doesn't focus as much on the Declaration of Independence in this book. She focuses on the Constitution, which is a hot topic. And her opening governing thesis in this book is that the Constitution was a document that was meant to be amended. That was not meant to be a static document, that the founding fathers intended for it to be changed in order to meet the needs of the day. That is a controversial statement today.
To meet the needs
of the day, the needs of the day.
Okay.
That was what our founding fathers thought, that this was a malleable document, that it is hard to amend, but that it was not meant to stay the same. Since 1789, this number freaked me out when I came across it. There have been 11,000 proposed amendments to the Constitution. So I don't know how serious, I mean, that's a real number, but I don't know how many of that 11,000 were actually serious. But if you're up on your Constitution, you will know that there have only been 27 actual amendments and none in several decades. And the first 10 came in one fell swoop. So the book goes through some of the ones that were really hard fought. I don't know if you remember from your high school history that that senators used to be appointed by the governor of the state. An amendment changed that to senators being elected. The income tax is an amendment, the 16th Amendment. There wasn't one, and that's in the Constitution. She goes through the failure to enact the Equal Rights Amendment and touches on the current hot amendment topic, which is the abolishment of the Electoral College. So this is a very hot topic book, is the point. And she's a very respected American history scholar. And for all of those reasons, that's why this book is on the list. Book 5, is that right? Yes, is the Phoebe Variations by Jane Hamilton. This is in literary fiction and it's coming out on the 23rd. If you're sitting back, you're saying, Jane Hamilton, that sounds really familiar. So she was a darling of the fiction community. Her first 2 novels, The Book of Ruth and A Map of the World, were Oprah book club picks way back in the early days of the Oprah book club. Her last novel, The Excellent Lombards, which was very good, was published in 2016, and she has been silent since then. And that's a long time for a writer of fiction to go without a novel. And so the fact that she has a new book is getting a lot of attention. And this one is getting some very, very early positive reviews. The Phoebe in the title is when we meet her, a high school senior in 1974, living in the suburbs of Chicago. She is adopted, and her adoptive mother feels that she should meet her birth parents before she goes off to college, which Phoebe is extremely ambivalent about. They go to Wisconsin to meet the birth parents. It doesn't go well. And Phoebe, along with her best friend, who's a wealthy young woman, runs away. And they go to another friend's house, which is filled with that friend, who's a boy, has 13 siblings. So he's one of 14, and they just figured they're going to blend right in. And so the book, which is told from now, Phoebe now looking back at that time, is about biological family versus found family, and about motherhood, and about finding out who you are and your sense of self and where your path is. And it's just getting, I can't say that it's getting as much love as Buckeye because I haven't seen any kind of love like the love Buckeye is getting. But, here's once again, Hamilton is exceptionally nuanced and enthralling, profound and funny in this gorgeously written modern fairy tale. So that sounds good. So anyway, that's Phoebe Variations coming out on the 23rd. Okay. Book 6, Strong Ground by Brene Brown, coming out also on the 23rd. This is another nonfiction. So a pause, and if you're on Zoom, you're seeing the book cover even bigger than the people in the room are. If anyone can find this book cover in a fabric, I would like it to make into a shirt or a dress. This is my favorite cover of the 571. I just need to say that, lest you think I'm all brainiac. This is superficial stuff now. No, I love this cover. But here's a little fun fact that is happening in the publishing world that makes me insane. I think this is mostly for nonfiction, when a big fiction book gets announced, there's now an actual press release, like it's a news flash, and they do a movie trailer kind of thing for the book. It's crazy. And which goes up on all the social media stuff. And sometimes there's an article, if it's a really big book, we'll come to a few of those. When there's a nonfiction book that publishers want to generate excitement about, they tease it in the way they tease this book. When a book is scheduled for publication, it's assigned an ISBN number, that long 13-digit number that starts with 978. And if you looked up this ISBN number until 6 weeks ago, if you put it into the Amazon search box or the Baker and Taylor or library distributor search box, what would come up is untitled, unknown author, self-help, leadership genre, no description. And I'm not kidding. There were hundreds of pre-orders because everyone assumed it had to be something big. So it works, right? This works. And I was like, well, that's annoying. So I just kept checking the ISBN number until finally Brene Brown. And I was like, oh, it's Brene Brown. Okay. So Brene Brown, if you don't know who she is, she's a lot of things. She's a research professor at the University of Houston. She is an endowed chair in the Graduate School of Social Work. She also is a full professor at UT Austin's Business School. She is the author of 6 previous books, and every single one of them has been #1 on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list. And honestly, other than James Patterson, I don't know anyone you can say that about. 6 books, nonfiction, all #1. Her TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, has been viewed something like 90 million times, which I can't even get my brain around. She has 2 award-winning podcasts. She is a self-help leadership superstar. And over the last 6 years, she, along with a bunch of other coaches, have gone and worked with 150,000 leaders in 45 countries. Through her work, which is called Dare to Lead. That's her program that she's developed. And this book, Strong Ground, is the vision of Dare to Lead and what she's taken away from all of this work that she's done with all of these leaders. With our lead, which leader would that be?
Cindy.
So far as I know, she hasn't come to Washington, D.C. to work with any of the leaders there. But this is a book to what is described as reimagining the essentials of courageous leadership. And of course, This is a hot button, yet another hot button topic of real interest to people. How do you lead? How do you construct a workplace of commitment and accountability and teamwork, and also not lose being a genuinely good person? Like this is her whole shtick. She is going to do a virtual author event on October 14th about this book. You cannot get the Zoom link unless you buy the book. And you can only get the Zoom link if you buy the book from one of a designated list of independent bookstores. So if you go to her website and follow the links, there's a list of the independent bookstores and you can, so I thought that was kind of nice. I like that. It's a little extra nice. So I wanted to add that. Okay. If you were here last fall, I told you that I was thinking about renaming the Notable 20, the Notable 19, plus the new Richard Osman book. And lo, here we are. In case you are living under a rock, let me just tell you a little bit about the Thursday Murder Club books. They are set in an affluent retirement community in England. And the 4 members of the Thursday Murder Club are people who live in this community, and they get together once a week to try to solve cold crimes. They find that interesting. And then, of course, what happens is there's a crime, not cold, very hot in their community. They're written by Richard Osman, who before the first book came out was totally unknown in this country, but he's Sylvia can attest, a very popular British TV personality. Yes, fair to say. And the books have been unbelievably successful. There have been to date 4, each one as good, if not better, than the one before. According to the chair of the Crime Writers Association, they've had a seismic impact on cozy mysteries, which is a subgenre of mysteries. It's a very strange name because people get killed. So I'm not sure what's cozy about them. What's cozy is that they're set in some quaint, think Miss Marple and Agatha Christie. That's a cozy mystery. People get murdered, but in a lovely sense. It's off screen. It isn't someone you cared about anyway. I think it's really just to distinguish it from, a detective kind of mystery. But they've become so popular that now we're getting a whole new generation of cozy mysteries as coming out of the success of the Thursday Murder Club books. So book 5 is called The Impossible Fortune. It's coming out on the 30th. Again, you have to read them in order. But no, you really do, because there's a very significant plot development at the end of book 4, and the build up to that is worth it. And book 5 won't have the same punch if you haven't.
Excellent.
There you go. As Kate says, the character development is excellent. There are 3 reasons why this is going to be, oh my God. You want?
I'll help you out.
Oh my God, why did you dress? That was really, cheers, Blue Moon. This is my one drink. I don't drink until this stage of the 3rd session of Book Buzz. Cheers, everybody. Oh, that's good. Okay.
You didn't mention the Netflix series.
That's one of the reasons. 3 reasons why this book is going to be an even bigger deal than the 4 that preceded it. The first is that he took last year off to write the first book in a new series called We Solve Murders, a little less cozy, a little more thrillery. And so after the gut punch of book 4, we had to then wait an extra year. So that's one reason. The second reason is the Netflix movie adaptation of the first book dropped at the end of August, starring Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan, Ben Kingsley, and Celia Imrie, produced by Steven Spielberg's production company and directed by Christopher Columbus. mega,
Yeah, what a pedigree.
mega. And the third reason that it's going to be so big is that according to the early reviews, it's actually the best of the series so far, which I cannot believe just because how can he improve? But there you go. I looked yesterday. Remember, you do not have to wait for books to come out to put them on hold at the library. They are in the catalog when we order them. I can't remember when we ordered this book. When I looked yesterday, there were already 105 holds in the consortium. We will buy more copies, don't worry. Okay. Shadow Ticket by Thomas Pynchon. Yes, wow, is coming out on October 7th. There was, as I've said, for fiction, there was a big press release and a New York Times article about this in April for a book that is coming out in October. Thomas Pynchon is 87 years old. And this is his first novel since 2013. If you are a fan of the hardcore literary fiction, then he's one of your guys. He became famous in 1973 for his third novel, Gravity's Rainbow, which was the sort of sprawling post-World War II Europe metaphysical hoo-ha that won the National Book Award, and he's been in that orbit ever since. But he is notoriously private. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't do any publicity for his books. He barely poses for photographs, and I thought he had stopped writing. This is a surprise. And it sounds pretty great. If you've read him, you know that he likes to play with the names of his characters. And the protagonist of Shadow Ticket is a private eye named Hicks McTaggart, who lives in Milwaukee and who is hired to search for a missing heiress to a Wisconsin cheese fortune. And this is set in 1932, in the Great Depression. And his search for her, which he considers to be routine, takes him across Europe to Hungary. And if you know anything about 1930s Eastern Europe, that was an extremely interesting place to be. So he gets caught up with Nazis and Russian spies and British counter spies and all of that. And it's also the big band era, and he's really into music, and it sounds crazy and really, really good. But the key thing is that Thomas Pynchon at 87 has a new novel, the first new novel in 12 years. So, okay. Okay, this next one is a little, I sort of had to do this. You may recall that there's become this trend of very successful authors partnering with very successful people who are not authors to write books. We saw that with James Patterson and President Bill Clinton, and also James Patterson with Dolly Parton.
With anybody.
With James Patterson will just partner with anybody if you're famous. We saw it with Louise Penny, the author of the very popular Inspector Gamache series, partnered with Hillary Clinton. Now we have Harlan Coben, very popular author. This is in the popular fiction handout, is partnering with Reese Witherspoon, who is an actress, but she's a book person. She is a book person. She has a book club. She has written some children's books, but she's partnering with Harlan Coben to write this thriller called Gone Before Goodbye, which is coming out on October 14th. You know as well as I do that it does not really matter what this book is about. It's going to just be very successful. It's here because it's a very notable pairing between two people who are famous for very different reasons working together. I don't know what their writing process was like. The only interview I've seen them give thus far was in People magazine, and there was not a lot of meat on the bones in that article, but I'm sure they will do publicity as we get closer. What it's about is an Army combat surgeon, a female Army combat surgeon named Maggie, who is lives on the edge, very, very good at what she does, and gets into trouble and gets her license, her medical license revoked, and is desperate to get back in the game. One of her former colleagues is an elite plastic surgeon whose clients are very high and mighty and wealthy. And one of them is undergoing a procedure that is very complicated. Maggie knows how to do it. She agrees to do it. And then that mysterious high and mighty patient disappears, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If, you know, it's going to be a very, very successful book. I put it to you. If it's not your thing, I don't blame you, but read it if you want. Okay. The Zorg by Siddharth Kara. I need beer for this. No, this is actually, this is the hardest book to talk about of the 20. This is coming out on October 14th and is in history and politics. Siddhartha Kara is a history professor at the University of Nottingham in England and was a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize. He's a very, very good writer. The Zorg is the name of a Dutch merchant ship that in 1781 was captured by the British and purchased by a slave businessman. I don't know how else to put that. And that, you know, we talk a lot about the history of slavery in America, but the British Empire also trafficked in slaves in the Caribbean. And so the owner, this new British owner of the Zorg, overfilled it with Africans and hired a crew that was really not very experienced and set sail for Jamaica. So already that's a recipe for a problem. Too many people and an inexperienced crew. The ship hit bad weather and had all kinds of delays getting across the Atlantic. And the official story, which Kara does not believe, is that they were running low on food and water. And in order to save as many people as they could, they tossed 130 slaves overboard. I told you this is hard to talk about. Okay? So that's bad, right? That's bad. Just for extra bad, the owner of the ship asked the insurance company to reimburse them the value of those 130 slaves. The insurance company said, go kiss my ass. And there was a court case. And this got a tremendous, so there was no abolitionist movement in 1781 in Britain. But this court case got attention. The jury found for the owner of the ship, which you can do with what you will. But a group of people who were getting on the abolitionist bandwagon worked together with the insurance company to get a new trial. And the new trial, the judge threw the jury verdict out. And this story is actually credited with eventually bringing about the end of the British slave trade in 1807. Kara, I will say, just why I said, he thinks that they didn't do it because they were running low on food and water. He thinks they did it because those 130 slaves were so sick that they were going to fetch less at market than the value of their insurance policy on them, which is right. Everybody take a big drink of your wine. Anyway, this book is getting a ton of attention. You can imagine why. I suspect it will make for horrible reading, but it's a big deal. Okay. Everyone's getting more booze as a result of that. Nonfiction. Nonfiction. I wish it were fiction. It's nonfiction. It's in the history and politics handout. We're 10 books in. If you're on Zoom, we're 10 books in, and half of the room has gotten up to get another drink. Okay. So we're just going to pause briefly. Intermission, slight intermission. I said it. was hard. But an important story, an important story. Well, I should think about putting a 10-book break into the book buzz schedule going forward. Look at this. This is the 7th inning stretch. We're gonna do Sweet Caroline in a minute.
I was just thinking we should do a review. Of all the books. Yeah, well, I've been coming to this for a long time, and I have a stack of these. We ought to do kind of a-
That would be awesome.
Yeah, compilation.
I do, but they all got it.
It turned out-
But a lot of these next books are very good.
Which one's great, I know it's very safe.
Yeah, I know, it's true. I mean, I read most of the notables. I can't say that I read them all,
Yeah.
but some of them are really, it's turned out not to be, but the buzz on them is so, I often don't agree with reviewers,
Yeah.
although the novels I've talked about so far, I really want to be, they all sound. Hard to believe they're not good, basically. Guys, guys, we're gonna. All right, shh. Guys, we're gonna, just because it's, time is going. I'm fine with building in an intermission in future book buzz sessions, but we didn't factor that in, and I want to keep going with the books, okay? Susan and Sylvia, we're gonna keep going. Okay. Book 11, so some of these books that are coming up require very little explanation.
Oh my.
And this is one. Harper Lee has a new book coming out. Harper Lee has a new book coming out. She didn't come back from the dead, just in case you were wondering. It's called The Land of Sweet Forever. It is a collection of previously unpublished short stories, and along with essays and magazine pieces that were published. Casey Sepp, the author of Furious Hours, our one book, which profiled Harper Lee, is writing the introduction for this. It has a staggering 1 million first print.
Wow.
Okay, I know. This is why I wanted you sitting there. Everyone is going to want to read this. So that's all. Harper Lee has a new book. No, nothing. Nothing. It doesn't matter. The themes, it's the same. It's small town, father-daughter, small town, race relations, the stuff that she was thinking about before she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, all right. This next one probably doesn't require much explanation either. This is another book that had just the ISBN, and this was announced the last week of August. The last week of August, this book was announced. Nobody's Girl by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. This is coming out, this is coming out on the 21st of October. This is in bio and memoir. Picture that picture, the lovely strawberry blonde woman with Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. That woman is Virginia Giuffre. She was a victim of Epstein and Maxwell. She is the forefront of the voice of the victims that stood up and got them sent to jail and instigated Prince Andrew's fall from grace. She took her own life in April, and she was working on this memoir for years, and she left explicit instructions that she wanted it published. Okay? So there's no, I don't know, should we read this? Should we read this? She wanted it read. This is about how she came out of that victimhood and how she found the strength to bring them to justice. Obviously, a topic that is in the news every single day. Okay? This is a big book. Wreck by Catherine Newman, coming out on the 28th of October. This is an other fiction. Catherine Newman, if you were in the Thursday Night Book Club, wrote We All Want Impossible Things, the book about a woman whose best friend is dying of cancer. Her last book, Sandwich, was a mega bestseller about a woman, let's just say, a menopausal woman who is in the sandwich generation, dealing with aging parents and also dealing with newly adult children making their way early in the world. The book was set on Cape Cod during the family's annual trip. The name is also because every day she made a ton of sandwiches for them to bring to the beach. She, the main character of Sandwich, is a woman named Rocky, who is kind of off her rocker. I'm just going to tell you. She thinks things that we all think, but she then goes and says, and she gets into trouble. And then she sort of gets out of trouble, and you can't help but like her, but you kind of want to kill her. And the book is very, in that sense, very real. And it was just a huge, huge hit. And Wreck is a sequel to Sandwich, set 2 years in the future at the family's home in Western Massachusetts in the fall. Her widowed father is now living with them. She has one child living at home. She's dealing with the same kind of middle-aged stuff. She's got a rash that she can't explain, which sends her down the healthcare nut job. WebMD is making her, all this sort of stuff. And it's showing up literally at the top of every most anticipated list. So that's why it's here. And these books are not very long. They're very likable. They're a little lewd, but that's not bad. And we're seeing a lot of books now, starting to see more books about menopausal women, previously taboo. They're having a moment, very long overdue moment. And this is just the current big example. Okay. Look at the cover of this next book. Who is Luigi? Oh, dear God, says Susan Gomes. Luigi, give me the Italians. How do you say his last name? Mangione? Mangione. On December 4th of last year, at 6:44 in the morning, Luigi walked up to the CEO of United Healthcare in front of the New York Hilton in Midtown Manhattan and shot him dead. And so I put this in bio and memoir. It's coming out on November 4th. This could almost be in other nonfiction. This is about him, but it is also about the fact that instead of people saying, oh my God, a shooting in Midtown Manhattan, like this could happen to all of us, gun control, he is seen as a folk hero. As a folk hero because of the anger at our healthcare system. And people literally posted one down, how many, okay. So John Richardson, who writes for The Atlantic and for Esquire magazine, has done a book, an expose of Luigi and of the state of play that allows him to be cast in this role. Obviously, he has not come to trial yet. I should also say that a month ago, James Patterson announced that he was also working on a book on Luigi. I'm saying that now so that when I don't mention it when it comes out, you'll know. But in any event, I haven't met, anytime I mention the existence of this book, somebody has Susan Gomes' reaction. Oh, whoa. It's notable. It is notable. Okay, the next two books are because beloved, iconic figures have written them. The first is a memoir by Anthony Hopkins called We Did Okay, Kid, which is coming out on November 4th. Anthony Hopkins was born in 1937, and this is his first memoir. One assumes his only memoir. She should only write, well,
Just like a third.
I should say that Cher's memoir, parts 1 and 2, part two was due out this fall, but has been pushed to next spring. So if you're looking for it, it's not here, alas. So this is what's striking to me about this book, apart from that he's won pretty much every award that an actor can win. And over the course of his career, is that I think that reviewers come to celebrity memoirs with not that high expectations, People don't read celebrity memoirs for the writing. I mean, I think that's fair to say. No aspersions meant, but people really are liking this book. They say that it's very understated, that he just he doesn't embellish, he just tells it. He was a very introverted kid. His teachers thought he was slow. And in school, they showed Laurence Olivier's Hamlet, the movie, which came out in 1948, and which, by the way, if you haven't seen, you really should see. Yeah. And he wrote, "I felt that Olivier as Hamlet was speaking to me, referring to some long vanished ancient part of myself." And that made him interested in acting and Shakespeare. And he ultimately wound up going to London and working with Olivier. He is somewhat bemused at the success that he's had in his career. He was an alcoholic for decades. He stopped drinking in 1975, and he talks about that. This book is just getting a lot of really nice early press, and it's Anthony Hopkins. So, okay.
I just want to say.
Yes.
I wrote a paper in high school on Hamlet's Olivier, my English. It was that meaningful.
It's pretty good.
It's
pretty good. It's pretty good. Right. And Kate will be writing a memoir that's coming out next year. We'll see. The other icon who has a book coming out is Dick Van Dyke. This book is called 100 Rules for Living to 100, and it is coming out on the 18th of November. This is in short stories and essays, because even though it's autobiographical, it's a collection of stories and reflections and life advice for how to maintain a zest for life as you age. This book got announced before he turned 100, and I don't want to sound mean, but I was a little nervous. But he did recently turn 100, so it's all good. And if you've seen him, I mean, you either grew up with the Dick Van Dyke Show, or you grew up with Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but he's a delight. And if you've seen him recently, he's still dancing, he's still singing. He's great. And so this one is clearly going to be, you're going to buy this book for your dad. You're going to buy, this is going to be a book you're going to want to read. You're going to read with a smile on your face, and you're going to want to give to other people. This was just low-hanging fruit to me. So, okay. Christmas book, a Christmas book for somebody. Right. Okay. If you were a reader when you were a kid, and you were interested in Cold War, classic Cold War espionage books, you read John le Carré, Robert Ludlum, and Frederick Forsyth, right? Those were your guys. They were my guys. There were doorstop books that you raced through because they were page turners and because you were living in the Cold War and they had resonance. I honestly, this is just a terrible thing. This is what I'm about to say is terrible. I did not know that Frederick Forsyth was still alive. When they announced this book, he was, and now he isn't. And I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry. But he did write this book with Tony Kent before he passed away, but he passed away earlier this year. His most famous book was The Odessa File, which it's worth rereading. It is about a journalist named Peter Miller who infiltrated the Odessa, which was an organization of SS officers after World War II, who were all over the world, as of course they were. In Revenge of Odessa, which is obviously a sequel, his grandson, also a journalist, is interviewing in a hospital, interviewing victims of a terrorist attack in Germany when he meets an old man who is a member of Odessa. And that man dies, and he, the journalist, the grandson, is framed for the death. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, if you are a fan of this kind of stuff, go reread the Odessa file and then read this. This is coming out on November 18th. Three more, all the last three are 2026 releases. And I'm going to tell you honestly, they're not on the list, right? The lists, the most anticipated books of fall 2025 end in December. You have to trust me on these next three. I've been attending webinars. I missed a webinar today that went into the spring. I got the list. I was too busy today, but I have the list. I've looked at the list. So I know already about books that are coming out next spring into June, some really good ones. So we can talk about January and February, but this is just, I'm pretty sure, but they're not on the list, okay? The first is The First Time I Saw Him by Laura Dave. Laura Dave used to write really nice novels, really charming, not demanding novels about women who were going through something and came out the other end. There was a little romance. They were nice. I liked them. She pivoted to thrillers and has become a best-selling novelist. Her last book was called The Last Thing He Told Me, which has been made into an Apple TV miniseries produced by Reese Witherspoon, who keeps showing up. Hugely successful. The Last Thing He Told Me is about a woman who marries a man who has a teenage daughter from his first marriage. The man disappears and leaves her a note that says, protect her. And the book is about her discovering that her husband was caught up in stuff and trying to protect this teenage daughter that she doesn't really know very well. It's now 5 years later. In The First Time I Saw Him, their lives have stabilized. They're living in Southern California. Everything is okay. And her husband appears. Oh, yes. 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 Well, now you may have to, now I don't know. Okay. So that's coming out on January 6th in the thriller handout. The next book, which Sylvia will tell you is a source of tremendous excitement for a few of us. This is, I always ask you, which of the 20 would you most want to read if you had all 20 in front of you? I never answer it myself. I'm answering it for you. It's this book. Vigil by George Saunders, which is coming out on January 27th. This was also the subject of a big press release and a big article in New York Magazine. George Saunders is the best short story writer working today in America. That is it. I'm just going to say that. And I think I can take challenges on that, but I'm telling you it's true. He's been a creative writing professor at Syracuse for decades. He's a master of the short story. He has won every award that it is possible to win in that genre. And in 2017, he said, well, let me try a novel. And he wrote one of the best novels of the 21st century called Lincoln in the Bardo, which won the Booker Prize that year, and which I highly recommend if you have not read. It's not easy, but it is worth it. The Bardo, if you're not up on your Buddhism, is a liminal, an in-between space between the life you've just left and the next life you're going to. That's the Bardo. Vigil, his new novel, which is coming out on January 27th and is in literary fiction, is another in-between space, not quite the same one. We are in the last night in the life of an oil company CEO. He is being ferried to the afterlife by a woman named Jill, who's had this job of ushering the newly dead to their next place since her own death in the 1970s. This is on the jacket copy. As Boone, the CEO, races towards death, visitors, worldly and otherworldly, alive and dead, arrive, clamoring for a reckoning. And the novel was prompted by his own thinking about climate deniers 30 years ago and what they're thinking today. So he imagined that conversation as you're dying. What would you try to justify? What would you do? So he picked an oil company CEO for that role. I can't wait. This is going to be, and this is going to be a big book. Okay, last book is More Than Enough by Anna Quinlan, coming out on February 24th. Anna Quinlan, see? Anna Quinlan. So Kate knows who Anna Quinlan is. Anna Quinlan has been writing for my entire adult life. She started off working for the New York Times. She had a column called Life in the 30s, about being in your 30s and being a working mom and being married and living in New Jersey and what all of that was like. And it was fabulous, fabulous weekly column, super popular. People quoted it all the time. She pivoted to a political column for Newsweek, and then about 25 years ago, switched to fiction, left journalism and switched to fiction, and has written a slew of some very dark, honestly, wonderful novels. And this is her new one. This is in the other fiction handout. It is about a high school English teacher who's happily married. Her husband is a vet. They have a very good life. They don't have any children. She has a great circle of friends. She loves her students, and her friends, as a joke, buy her an ancestry test. And she does the test, and lo, the results pair her with a stranger genetically, which I suspect you all know is happening a lot. And she thinks, oh, it must be a mistake. And then she starts digging in her family history, and she finds out a lot. And that's what the book is about. Topical. Anna Quinlan will be a bestseller. She's great. And there are your notable 20 for the fall of 2025. Okay. So cheers. So on Zoom, put it in the chat, in the room. All 20 books are right in front of you. Susan Gomes is taking the Harper Lee, I already know. But everyone else, what is the first book you would take of the 20 to read?
Impossible Fortune.
Impossible Fortune. Dick Van Dyke. 2 for Buckeye on Zoom. Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Say All the Way to the River. And let's talk about it, because I'm going to read it too. And we'll talk about it.
Phoebe variation.
The Phoebe Variations. Jane Hamilton.
Nobody's like
George Saunders. Pat. Strong Grounds. What was the first one? The Zorg. Yes, the Zorg.
Nobody's girl.
Vigil. Say again?
Nobody's girl.
Nobody's Girl. Right. Right. It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick just one. We the People. Oh, Sylvia. Oh, Sylvia. Right after Vigil. Right. I know I want to say Virgil too, but it's Vigil. A lot of really good nonfiction. I struggled because there's fewer nonfiction in the handout, and so I didn't, but I really struggled because there's so many very hot nonfiction topics right now. Yeah. I noticed this when I was working on it. I was like, wow, there's really a lot of nonfiction. I know. It's a good observation. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? The Zorg is great. The Zorg is coming out. Yes. A rough one, but worthy. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. Cheers. Thank you on Zoom. Have a drink.